And showtime, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us on the ChannelPro 5-Minute Roundup, a weekly look at news, trends, and tips for the SMB channel in 5 minutes or thereabouts. My name is Rich Freeman. I am the executive editor of the ChannelPro Network and one of your co-hosts on this program. With me is my fellow co-host, Erick Simpson, who is Senior Vice President and CIO of SPC International, a business improvement and training organization for MSPs and other IT providers. Erick, how goes it this week?
Well, it goes fantastic, Rich. I had to take off mute. I think I heard some noise outside, but no, it's going really good. You know, summer's here officially now, and I'm looking forward to doing some summer things with the family. We got some family coming in to visit us next week, and it's fantastic. Now, I understand that you might have a little bit of opportunity to enjoy some of the summer as well here in a minute. A little less travel, maybe perhaps for you.
Yeah, I've been traveling a lot lately, and July and August are going to be a little bit slower. So I'm on the road next week, and then I'm actually home for a couple of weeks, away for a week, but then home for 2 weeks and on vacation, and home a bunch after that. So yeah, I get to slow down a little bit during the summer months and enjoy the nice weather. We don't get a whole ton of nice weather here in Seattle, so it'll be good to be able to enjoy it.
Copy that. Awesome. Well, what have we cooked up for our listeners today, our viewers?
Well, let's start out by talking about this week's road trip for me, which was to Orlando, where I attended the ConnectWise, Automation Nation event. Big week for events, obviously. So Automation Nation was taking place. That's where I was. Datto was hosting its DattoCon event in Austin, Texas. Hewlett-Packard Enterprise had its partner event in Las Vegas. But the one I was at was the ConnectWise show, and I wanted to talk a little bit. Quite honestly, there wasn't earth-shattering news out of any of those shows. I thought there was some interesting stuff, but nothing huge. There was something interesting I learned at ConnectWise, Automation Nation, that kind of ties into what we talked about last week. So you might remember in November, ConnectWise introduced a new product, a new addition to its portfolio called Unite. And it's basically sort of a provisioning and management system for cloud computing solutions. So they're hooked in today to Amazon Web Services and Microsoft Azure and Office 365. It's sort of a central portal that you can use to manage those accounts for all of your customers. But in a conversation, or two conversations actually, one with Arnie Bellini, the CEO of ConnectWise, and another with their Chief Product Officer, Craig Fulton, they both talked about the fact that down the road, and not all that far down the road, they're working right now on additional versions of Unite, one of which will focus on BDR and provide sort of a central console that you can use to manage the various backup products that you may be using to support your customers. And the other will provide the same function for security. And what was interesting about that to me is last week on the program, we talked about Continuum buying Carver. And Continuum obviously is a ConnectWise competitor. I think it's safe to say across the industry, everybody understands the scale of the challenge with security and the scale of the opportunity for channel pros. And all of the companies that do managed services software are adopting one strategy or another about how they're going to deal with security and enable MSPs to deal with security. Continuum has created a security suite, which existed before the Carver acquisition. It is even broader now that they've added Carver, and it includes a lot of outsourced elements. So clearly their idea is they're going to allow you to transfer some of that security workload to them, and that's how they'll support their MSPs and security. The direction that ConnectWise chose to go, though, is kind of characteristic of them, in that rather than create their own security software, they created a hub that you're going to be able to use to manage security solutions from other providers. And this is absolutely in line with the ConnectWise strategy as it's described with me every time I have an opportunity to sit down with Arnie Bellini. They will happily sell you as many different line of business applications as you use if you're an MSP. Your RMM system, your PSA, systems like Unite that you can use to manage accounts for your customer. They are not interested in selling you the stuff that your customer is actually using, the BDR software, the security. The role that they want to play in those markets basically is to sort of be the hub and the enabler, sort of the cockpit, the dashboard for all those different accounts that you work with. So essentially, rather than creating a security suite of their own and potentially competing with a lot of the security vendors out there, they want to unite, hence the name of the product, all these different security vendors in one place, which will kind of glue your relationship with them if you're an MSP, and allow them to essentially build this army, they say ecosystem, I'm saying army of different vendors with whom they will compete with some of these other companies like Continuum. So 2 weeks, two very different sort of strategic approaches to a common industry issue.
Yes, and what a savvy strategy this is. This is the Switzerland Universal Connector, and please, enjoy all of these products and services, single pane of glass, ability to manage and all that. And oh, by the way, it's almost like, they're able to build a great brand, and as you say, kind of not become competitive, but open the doors. And it's almost as if a small transaction happens on all sides. So ConnectWise is in the catbird seat, very strategically, very savvy, creating this opportunity to connect all these different vendors and all these different channel pros together. And I would assume there's a financial benefit to all of this in the background, right? So very savvy, very I think empowers their partners. It helps build better relationships between vendors. It creates this agnostic perspective for ConnectWise, but they are certainly benefiting in other ways as well.
And to that point, basically, I mean, they state emphatically over there that ultimately they want to make it possible for any third-party software company to connect with Unite. But in terms of where they're going to start and focus their attention going in, it is, 26 vendors out there. You can buy the stuff straight from the Salesforce at ConnectWise. And for obvious reasons, that's where they're going to begin. And so, there is that piece of the equation for them as well.
It's a profitable universal connector strategy.
Yes. Well, Eric, what's speaking of profit, what's our tech tip from you this week?
So this week's business tip of the week is to look at how we are crafting our proposals. And I want to suggest to our audience to modify your proposals to include 3 options. So moving from the perspective of, I know exactly what my client wants, I'm going to give them a quote for it and a proposal, and here's the price, to giving options. And a couple of reasons. So in the first scenario, when we are providing a proposal that is what we believe is the best solution for the client, that's great. Their decision now becomes, should I or shouldn't I, right? Yes or no. And when we offer 3 distinct options in a proposal, then the psychological switch turns on that says, instead of should I or shouldn't I, now the decision is, how should I? So it's a slight little psychological twist or flip that happens, and it allows the prospect or client to read and say, now this only works, Rich, when we're giving qualitatively more in each option, not quantitatively more. So for instance, it's 50 Office 365 licenses. Oh, here's option 2. It's 100 Office 3. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking qualitatively better. So with those 50 Office 365 licenses, with option 2, now we'll give you the email hygiene and security suite that goes with it. And then maybe with option 3, we'll also now deploy antivirus and anti-malware training to all of your staff. So now we're giving you the email option that you asked for. we're giving you, the other option is to layer on our advanced email hygiene. And then the third option now is we're going to train you and your staff how to identify phishing attempts and things like that, so you're secure. So these are qualitatively better options. And now it gets the client to think about, oh, how should I? And when we do this properly, listen to this, 85% of clients that are offered 3 options choose the 2 highest options, not the base option. And again, it only works if it's not a bait and switch. It can't be, I'm only giving you some of what you asked for in option 1 and more of it in option 2. No, you're going to give the client everything they asked for in option 1, but you're giving them additional things that you may not have thought to discuss with them, or maybe you hinted at and said, I'm going to give you 3 options. So here's what happens. Option 1, when we give them 3 options, 15% of the time they choose option 1. 60% of the time they choose option 2. 25% of the time they choose option 3. My source is $1 Million Consulting Proposals, How to Write a Proposal to Sell by Alan Weiss. And we've been using this philosophy for the last 3 or 4 years, Rich, and I'm telling you, it works like a charm. So increase your top sales by simply adding 3 options that are qualitatively better, and then walk your client through those options, and then ask them to choose how they would like to engage instead of would you like to engage.
It's interesting in the managed services world, as you well know, it's quite common to have the sort of gold, silver, bronze approach, the 3 different packages. And based on the MSPs I speak with, it's also very common for that silver package to be the most popular one, option 2, right. Essentially. And there are MSPs out there I know basically who factor that into the way that they construct these 3 different plans. Essentially, the silver plan in that model is the one that I know I want to sell to my clients. And I'm going to kind of sandwich that with something that's even more premium if they take that, fantastic, and something else that's okay, but maybe not as good. But just by virtue of having that sort of lesser package, I'm probably going to steer them a little bit to the silver one, the one that really they ought to be using.
And we work with, as you know, we work with a lot of partners in the industry, and we do a lot of this tiering and bundling and repricing of their services. And this does follow through with how you structure and bundle your tiers of services so that we can reflect those properly in your proposals. And we do heavily weight option 2. We want them in that middle tier, and that's where we add the most value, but we also receive the most margin.
All right. Well, very good stuff. Thank you, sir. We have got time for one more story here, and it's more or less in honor of the E3 conference that took place out in your neck of the woods last week, Eric. That's the biggest gaming conference of the year. Happened in Los Angeles. And just a few days after E3 wraps up, we find out that the World Health Organization has now characterized a brand new psychological disorder that they are calling gaming disorder. Now, I should say that, to qualify for gaming disorder, you have to have shown for at least 12 months, a pattern in which gaming is out of control. And out of control gaming, that does sound like a disorder. But I'm looking at some of the other qualifications for gaming disorder. A pattern of behavior in which increased priority is given to gaming to the point that gaming takes precedence over other interests and daily activities. Sounds like every gamer I know. Okay, moving on. A continuation or escalation of gaming despite the occurrence of negative consequences. Again, I keep losing, but I don't know. I think there are a lot of people with gaming disorder out there. Now, I am not a gamer myself, Eric. I don't know about you. Are you worried about qualifying for gaming disorder?
Well, I'm not a gamer myself either, but you have finally helped me diagnose what's wrong with my kids, Rich. This is it. I found the solution now. So, that is very, very interesting. And I also read that piece that you forwarded to me in preparation for today's podcast. And I got to tell you, it's almost as if you have an addictive personality, right? It's kind of what is your crutch of choice, right? Some of us, alcohol, some of us sports, betting, gaming. I mean, it's that, if you have that kind of, personality that quickly latches onto something and not concerned with anything else. I mean, 2-3 days later, I mean, sometimes I catch myself doing that when I binge watch like a whole series of something, you know, on Netflix for a whole week, and you just like you're into it, right? But no, it's very interesting, and of course, we've heard a lot of, you know, I think folks talk about this, about the addictiveness of it, about, and you know, in maybe a similar conversation, the cell phone addiction, right? People on their cell phones and are just on their, and I tell you, you know, 20 years ago, walking down the street, you know, you weren't bumping into people.
Yeah.
Now, you know, people are bumping into me and I'm bumping into them. And it's really you know, the technology has really created these, I think, opportunities, you know, in a bad way for us to lose touch with each other and lose touch with, you know, that human relationship. Because I know, you know, our younger son, he'll just shut his door and be in there all day, all night. And we've got to go up and knock on the door and get him down. Hey, dinner's ready. And he's in there, you know, full on gaming gear and game on. So you know, I can understand the point that they're making.
Yeah, well, I'll have to, after the show here, I'll have to go look up and see if there's such a thing as social media disorder, because you would imagine, given the amount of time some folks spend on Facebook and Twitter and so on, that could qualify too.
Well, for sure, there's got to be a Candy Crush disorder, because you know, I know a few people that have that addiction.
Well, all right, that is all the time we have this week on the 5-Minute Roundup. Thank you so much for joining us. If you would like to keep apprised of future episodes and join us for those, please subscribe to the ChannelPro Network channel on YouTube. If you want more great content about managed services, stories about companies like ConnectWise and products like Unite and way, way beyond, go to ChannelProNetwork.com. We have new content for you every day. To learn more about SPC International and the great work that Eric and his team do for folks there, you want to go to consulting.spc-intl.com. That's consulting.spc-intl.com. We will be back next week with another episode of 5-Minute Roundup. Until then, enjoy the rest of your week. Eric and I are enjoying the rest of your week already.